How to get a job fast. In this video, we'll cover 5 powerful steps you can take today to get a job in a week or as little as 3 days. So watch this till the end. Just before we start, remember to smash that like button since it helps with the algorithm, and this video is free. Also, if you want to know how to get a job fast at 18 or how to get a job fast with no experience, steps will also apply to you, so pay attention. And if you're underage and you want to know how to get a job fast at 16, then you can use the same advice we give here, well, with a few exceptions that I'll tell you about. If you want to know how to get a job fast and easy, then it's going to be very hard for you to beat doing temp work. Step 1. Make a list with all the temp work agencies near you. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking, but Emil, I don't want to do temp work. I was already making 6 figures and I have 20 advanced degrees. Yeah, if you are still in a good job or you have a lot of savings and you can afford to wait, then cool. In this video, I'll show you how to get a job faster, even if it's still a long-term job choice that you're making. But if you need the money to pay the bills now, I strongly suggest that you consider doing temp work. At the end of the day, you don't have to put this in your resume. And if you end up getting long-term work within 3 months, you won't actually have to explain a 3-month resume gap. So, how to get a job within 1 week? Imagine knowing all the employers in your area, talking to them every single day about their hiring needs, and if they ever need anyone, they will tell you first. That's how some people get jobs the very next day. To give you an idea, I have a cousin who is an HR manager at a temp agency. Because she knew the hiring needs of all the employers in her area, she helped both of her siblings and her mom get good jobs. Now, they had to apply and get interviewed like everyone else, but they wouldn't have applied if they hadn't known in the first place. How does this relate to you? You don't need a relative working at an agency. All you have to do is step 2. Apply to every single temp agency in your area. Now that you have a list of all the temp agencies in your area, it's time to apply to all of them. While it could be redundant in a small area, you will be better served if you take this process seriously. This means you apply to the agency, you go for an interview at the agency, you either get called to get a job or you get called to have another interview at the place where you're actually going to end up working. The cool thing is this happens within days. Even faster if you are in an area with a lot of employers. Now, for those of you who don't know what temp work is, it's basically what it sounds like. It's just an employment contract that is done for a certain period of time instead of an indefinite amount of time like most long-term employment contracts are. So basically what you're doing is you're agreeing ahead of time that you're only going to work for this employer for a few weeks or a few days or a few months, however long the project you're being used for will last. So you might be thinking, okay, but what I want is a long-term solution. I want to have a job that just will keep on paying me every month no matter what. And I get that, but there are several advantages for you actually going for temp work. For example, as we mentioned before, the hiring process is very quickly. You will get paid. You don't have to deal with any of the taxes things. The agency that you are working for, the temp agency, will actually deal with all the tax issues and all that stuff. They're actually the ones who will pay you because they're the ones charging the end employer you're going to be working with. Another possibility is, and I've seen this many times, I actually have people, relatives who have done this as well, is that in some cases, the end company that's hiring you for a temporary period of time will actually have a full-time or long-term opportunity that they can take you towards, and they will actually keep you on their teams if you actually do a good job during the time that you are with them. So this is something that is of very high value, right? If you're someone who hasn't had the ability to get into a long-term job position any other way, then going for a temp job might be a possibility that could open that door for you depending on the employer that you end up with and what they need at that time. Also, while we did mention that if you do this over a very short period of time just for cash, you may not need to put that on your resume, This can also help you pass your resume if you have been unemployed or you have been having difficulties getting an actual job for long term now, so that people can see, employers can see that, hey, you weren't just not doing anything, you were actually going out there and you got a temp work, yes, but you actually did some good job or a good work there. Maybe you got a reference, maybe you got something else, an achievement that you can share, and all that stuff actually speaks positively of you and will allow you to move towards the more long-term side of things. All right, so when it comes to teenagers or getting a job fast as a teenager or getting a job fast at 18 or at 16 or whatever, if you're above 18 years old, you can get most jobs out there legally, and that's not an issue unless you're dealing with stuff like alcohol. For example, to be a bartender, you will have to actually be 21 years old. But when you go below 18 years old, then there are different kinds of restrictions. I'm gonna go with these restrictions in the US. Many other developed countries will have similar restrictions. And it really depends on the country, but I will say that most countries have something similar to this in their law. But at the end of the day, it really depends on whether the employer is willing or not willing to actually take that risk with you. In most cases, they won't be if the law is very uphold where you're going to be working in, right? So without further ado, if you are below 14 years old, you can't work, like at least not legally. You can't just like, oh, even if it's part-time or whatever, you cannot do that, right? If you are 14 or 15, then yes, you can start working, but not any kind of job. You cannot do stuff that's putting you on a hazard, like construction labor, farm labor, any of the other things like working in a factory that could potentially put you at risk. If you are not 18 years old, you cannot do that. Also, if you are 14 or 15, you have certain limitations to the amount of hours that you can actually devote to working. I believe they give you a maximum of 3 hours per work day, as in Monday through Friday, you're supposed to be in school. So if school is in session, you can work a maximum of only 3 hours per day. And I think about 18 hours per week or something along those lines. It will depend on where you are at. So I will say go look that up, and if you look it up, that's even better, because you can go to your employer, and if they give you this as as a big question, like, hey, I don't even know if I can hire you, you're like 14, and you will tell them, no, I looked it up, I'm 14, I can work this many hours, this many days, and here's the proof that I am 14, right? And they'll actually be pretty impressed with that, and you might actually get a job from that. So that's the tip. Now, when you are actually 16 or 17, you don't have the same limitation when it comes to time, but you do have the limitation when it comes to whether it's a hazardous job or something along those lines, because you need to be 18 or older in order to consent to the forms that they give you, and like, hey, the employer is not like 100% liable if something happens to you, right? That kind of thing, because some jobs are more dangerous than others. So that's that. All right, so another way to go for a more long-term position, if that's what you're interested in, and now this is not going to be as fast as the temp work that we mentioned before, is to actually go for headhunters. Like, go and connect with several good headhunters that work with people in your industry or people with your level of seniority. Maybe you're someone who's just beginning and you don't know what to do. That can also potentially help you as well, especially if you've been looking and you have not been as good. Now think about it. You don't necessarily have a really good network of employers in your industry, but a headhunter will. And they will be able to tell, hey, like, we know that this person needs an employee right now that may fit your capabilities. So, hey, we're gonna set that interview for you. Personally, I've gone through that process, I believe, at least once. And that one time that I remember that I think I did it more, but that one time that I remember, I got a job interview within a week. So headhunters can be a great way to do it, especially if you go in and you hire several of them and you go with it. At the end of the day, I believe it's not the employee but the employer who actually pays for it. So you shouldn't be too wary of that. If they do charge you something, then there's a possibility that they're better, but that's something that you can verify with other people who have worked with them or somewhere along those lines. That will be a recommendation I will have for you if you really haven't had a job in a bit of a long time and you're really just looking for a long-term position and you don't want to mess with any of the temp work stuff that we've mentioned before. That will be a faster way. Either way, whether you're doing it that way or not, if you're going for a more long-term position, you want to make sure that you are branding yourself as an employee in a way that makes you very attractive to potential employers. This means like really knowing how to search for the jobs that are going to be a good fit for you. and having a really good resume that really translates all of your skill sets and all the experience you've had in a way that really fits what the employers are looking for. And you must also be able to have a really good interview. These are all things that I believe you need to improve on if that's something that you're lacking on. So you can see many of the other videos that we've made on it, and if not, you can always comment below.